In the early morning of July 5th, 2005, George Smith IV mysteriously disappeared on the Royal Caribbean Brilliance of the Seas cruise. Did George fall overboard accidentally, or is there more to the story? Lingering questions remain about the group of young men seen with him on the night before he disappeared. Did they simply witness a terrible mishap, or are they holding back information that could finally reveal what happened in those final hours? George Smith IV was born on October 3, 1978 in Greenwich, Connecticut, to parents George Smith III and Maureen Smith. From an early age, George was known for his friendly and sociable nature. He attended local schools where classmates and teachers remembered him as outgoing, generous, and widely liked. George studied business-related fields in college, a path that naturally led him to join his father in the family's well-known store, Greenwich Liquor. He expected to build a long-term career there, gradually taking on greater responsibilities over time. George was reported to be charismatic with customers, building strong rapport with both regulars and suppliers, and was admired for his people skills. In adulthood, friends and relatives described George as sociable, fun-loving, adventurous, and someone who loved to travel. In Connecticut, George eventually met Jennifer Hagel, a teacher and fitness instructor from Cromwell, Connecticut. Their relationship grew quickly and intensely, culminating in their marriage on June 25, 2005 in Newport, Rhode Island. After marrying, the couple decided to move to Greenwich so George could be close to his father's store. As newlyweds, they planned a grand honeymoon, booking a 12-day cruise across Europe, boarding Royal Caribbean's Brilliance of the Seas cruise, traveling through Italy, Greece, Turkey, and other Mediterranean ports. Completed in 2002, the Brilliance of the Seas was a modern Radiance-class cruise ship, carrying up to 2,543 passengers and 848 crew. Designed for long itineraries, it offered extensive amenities, a casino, multiple bars and lounges, pool decks, a solarium, and staterooms with private balconies, one of which George and Jennifer had booked. Their honeymoon itinerary took them through some of the Mediterranean's most iconic destinations: Venice, Italy, where the couple boarded, the Greek islands of Santorini, Mykonos, and Athens, Kusadasi in Turkey, and Dubrovnik, Croatia. In early July 2005, the Smiths caught a taxi into Florence, Italy, with the Askin family of Laguna Hills, California. The Askin family brought their 3 children, including 20-year-old Josh, which we will hear more about later. They boarded the Brilliance of the Seas in Venice, Italy, excited to start their honeymoon. In the days that followed, the couple settled easily into life aboard the ship. They wandered through historic ports, joining excursions that took them from sun-drenched waterfronts to crowded market streets, partook in gambling at the casinos, and drank socially at the ship's bars. On the morning of July 5, 2005, with the cruise ship docked at the Turkish port of Kusadasi, Jennifer Hagel Smith woke up in room cabin 9062 to an empty bed at around 8:30 a.m. Jennifer did not think anything about this, however. She figured George had simply fallen asleep with friends they met on the ship after a night of heavy drinking. Jennifer continued with her day, attending a scheduled appointment for a massage. It was during her appointment when an unnerving sight was discovered by a 16-year-old passenger standing on a nearby balcony who was snapping pictures with her new digital camera. Spread across the white canopy that sheltered the ship's lifeboats was a dark stain that looked unmistakably like blood that lay directly beneath the balcony of George and Jennifer's cabin. The blood-stained pattern appeared to look like a handprint and fingers, possibly revealing someone desperately trying to hold on to the edge. The team reported the discovery immediately, and investigators and ship security rushed to the scene. When they entered the Smith's cabin, blood was found on the bed sheets and possibly elsewhere in the room. It was clear something had gone very wrong during the night. When Jennifer was questioned, she told investigators she had little or no memory of what had happened after leaving the casino hours early in the morning. On the night before George Smith vanished, he and Jennifer set out to enjoy what should have been another carefree evening of their honeymoon. They started with a romantic dinner, but as the hours passed, the mood shifted into heavy drinking and high-stakes gambling in the ship's casino. Several witnesses later recalled hearing the couple mention the large amount of cash they were carrying, anywhere from $14,000 to $50,000 in wedding gifts and recent gambling winnings, all locked away inside their cabin. The Smiths often projected an image of glamour. Jennifer wore her large diamond wedding ring. George, sharply dressed, flashed the expensive Brilliance watch he treasured. According to George's mother, the pair looked every bit the picture of a wealthy honeymoon couple. These details would fuel early speculation. Had that outward display of money made them targets? Could someone on board have been watching and waiting? As investigators retraced the Smiths' final night on board, 3 young men repeatedly surfaced in witness accounts. These individuals would soon become known as simply the Russians. The men, 19-year-old Gregory Rosenberg, his 18-year-old cousin Zachary, and their friend Rostislav Rusty Kaufman, all originated from Brooklyn. Their group also included 17-year-old Jeffrey, Zachary's younger brother, along with Josh Askin, who would be later drawn into the investigation as well. The Russians had the reputation of being troublemakers and obnoxious on the ship, with the men abusing room service operators by placing obscenity-laced orders, and had security on numerous occasions warn them to stop their disruptive behavior. On the night of July 4th, George Smith and his wife Jennifer were drinking heavily in the ship's casino with the Russians and Josh Askin. Shortly before 2:20 a.m., George and Josh left to drink alcohol in Josh's cabin. Then the men stopped by George's cabin for more cash before returning to the casino. When the casino closed around 2:30 to 2:35 a.m., the group, along with the casino supervisor, Lloyd Rotha, took an elevator to the StarQuest Disco. Bartender Juan Gomez recalls seeing the group drinking vodka shots at around 3 a.m. and noted that George still appeared steady on his feet. Several witnesses also saw Josh, Greg, Zach, and Rusty drinking secretly from their own bottles. Descriptions of Jennifer's behavior varied. Some said she seemed flirty, while others believed she was simply very drunk. Around 3:30 a.m., George approached her and jokingly or angrily called her a hussy, prompting Jennifer to kick him in the groin. She then said, "F this, I'm out of here," and left the disco. The Russians and Josh all told the same story to investigators and to also passengers. They stated Jennifer left the disco with Lloyd to go cheat on George. This was later determined to be false, according to investigators. What really happened was multiple witnesses saw Jennifer leave alone, stumbling and hitting her head. A cleaner, Troy Gonzalez, followed her to the elevator and helped her to deck 9, but she wandered in the wrong direction, reaching a dead end at the ship and later collapsed unconsciously. George stayed in the disco about 15 more minutes. By 3:45 a.m., extremely intoxicated from vodka, he was escorted by Josh and others back to cabin 9062. Finding Jennifer missing, George became worried and persuaded the group to search for her. The search of the disco and the pool deck lasted only about 9 minutes and turned up nothing. They returned to the cabin at about 4:01 a.m. This brief window between 3:45 and 4:01 a.m. marks the last confirmed period in which George was seen alive. After escorting George Smith back to cabin 9062, the Rosenberg cousins and Josh Askin each gave statements describing what happened next. Zachary Rosenberg said they put him to bed, removed his shoes, and left him, passed out, not moving. He claimed the group returned to their cabins, ordered room service at around 4:30 a.m., and then went to sleep. Gregory Rosenberg's account echoes Zach's, though he makes no mention of ordering room service. Josh Askin's statement, however, stands out. He emphasized repeatedly that he used the bathroom in George's cabin while Rusty and the Rosenbergs tended to George, stressing that he couldn't see what happened in the room. Josh said that when he finished, he called out a verbal goodbye to George but didn't actually see where George was lying. Despite the unusual emphasis in Josh's version, the timeline appears, at least on paper, to back their accounts. Passkey records reportedly show Zach entering his own cabin, room 3008, at 4:05 a.m., and Greg opening cabin 3004 2 minutes later. The passkey records alone don't rule out the possibility that someone briefly returned to the Rosenbergs' cabins and then slipped back to George's room. This is because once a person is inside, no additional passkey entries are logged. Although the young men claim they left George asleep in his cabin at around 4 a.m., their story is contradicted by what an independent witness heard. Clee Hyman, a deputy police chief from California, staying in cabin 9064, reportedly being waken up at around 4 a.m. by loud shouting coming from inside cabin 9062. The noise sounded like a group of young men encouraging someone to take shots of alcohol. Hyman removed his earplugs and again heard the men yelling in unison. Concerned, he called guest relations to complain and banged on the shared wall. The room quieted briefly, but within minutes he heard heated arguing, now coming from the balcony, and several male voices speaking what he believed was Spanish or possibly Russian. He later recalled that for 5 to 8 minutes he heard movement coming from cabin 9062, cabin doors opening and closing, a toilet flushing, and a single male voice. Then came the unmistakable scrape and thud of balcony furniture being dragged, lifted, and dropped. Moments later, the cabin door opened. Hyman then heard multiple male voices in the hallway. When he stepped outside, he saw 3 white or Latino men walking towards the elevators. Hyman wasn't alone. 2 cabins down in 9062, passenger Carlos Menchaca was jolted awake by what he described as a big noise of many people. And onto the other side of the Smiths' room, Pat and Greg Lawyer in 9060 heard loud, distressed voices and violent crashes, far more intense than what Hyman had described. But at approximately 4:25 a.m., witnesses heard what Hyman described as a horrific thud, a sound now believed to be George Smith's body hitting the lifeboat canopy 2 decks below. No one reported hearing footsteps or a door open afterward. One passenger did recall hearing a woman scream immediately after the thud. Just 5 minutes later, at 4:30 a.m., 2 ship security officers finally arrived to investigate Hyman's noise complaint, a complaint he made at 4:05 a.m. Greg Lawyer, his door open, warned them, "You better get in there." The guards knocked firmly, but when no one responded to George's cabin, they moved on. At about the same time, a plumber found Jennifer asleep against a door in the hallway of Deck 9. Cruise personnel helped and escorted Jennifer back to her room at approximately 4:50 a.m. When they brought Jennifer back to her room, they noticed that the curtains and sliding door balcony had been closed. This is important because if George had purposely jumped off the ship, it would be impossible for the curtains and sliding doors to be closed behind him. When the ship docked in Kusadasi, Turkish authorities were the first to board. Word of a missing passenger had already reached land, and investigators moved quickly to secure the scene. They combed through George's cabin, documenting what appeared to be signs of a struggle. Outside, directly beneath his balcony, they discovered a streak of blood on the canopy of a lifeboat, and also 2 small lines of blood on the bed sheets that forensic evidence showed to be George Smith's blood. Several passengers, including the Rosenbergs, Rusty Kaufman, and Josh Askin, were removed from the ship and taken to Wilgo Police Station in Kusadasi for questioning.
Basically, he was sitting with us, and then they got up and they went to a bar. And then they were sitting with other people at the bar, and then they were sitting at the bar talking over there. And he came back. He was stumbling around, so he came back to sit with us and talk. And she disappeared. And then he's stumbling around. He's dead in the chair already. He's barely moving. So we helped him back to his room. When we got to his room, she wasn't there. We tried to find her. We brought him back, and he passes out in the bed.
The Turkish police were not able to conclude whether George Smith died from an accidental death or if he was murdered, and the men were able to return to the ship. July 7th, 2 days after George Smith's disappearance, an 18-year-old girl from Georgia was visibly shaken when her two friends returned to her room. The girl told her friends she thinks she was raped and the whole ordeal was videotaped. The girl named Rusty, Jeff, and Greg as the people who raped her. It started when she began to feel intoxicated when she was in the hot tub drinking when Jeff and Greg escorted her back to her room. When the ship docked in Naples, Italy, Royal Caribbean ejected the Rosenberg and Askin parties. Italian authorities briefly investigated but declined to pursue charges, citing lack of jurisdiction. The FBI also investigated the George Smith disappearance for 9 years, which included depositions, lie detector tests, and interviews with the men involved. In 2005, video obtained by the FBI showed the two Rosenberg men and Rusty Kaufman filming each other while eating breakfast in the ship's dining room. The men laughed, mocked George, and one unidentified man is heard saying, "We gave that guy a paragliding lesson without a parachute." This information was released by the FBI in 2012. However, on January 9, 2015, the FBI determined that there is not sufficient evidence to continue the investigation and the case was closed. One widely discussed theory suggests that George and Jennifer may have been drugged, making them vulnerable to exploitation and robbery. This could account for Jennifer's limited memory of the evening, as well as a sudden decline in George's alertness after the Rushes and Josh escorted him back to his room. Following George Smith's disappearance, Royal Caribbean reached a settlement with Jennifer for the wrongful death claim of her husband, initially paying around $1.1 million. After his parents contested the agreement, an amended settlement in 2010 increased the total payout to over $1.3 million, with a larger portion going to his family. In addition to financial compensation, the cruise line was required to provide investigative records, including security logs, door activity reports, and witness statements. Jennifer remarried in 2009 and stated she believed George's death was accidental and was a result of intoxication. No further legal action or criminal prosecution followed.